This is Negotiate X TV.
Welcome to the Negotiate X podcast. I am your co-host and co-founder, Nolan Martin. With me today is Aaron. But Aaron, we aren't alone today. Super excited to finally bring on another guest to the podcast. So I'm sure everyone's kind of tired of just listening to you and I talk back and forth. So I'm really excited for today's discussion.
Yeah, I am too. And it is my pleasure to welcome a good friend and colleague and someone I've gotten to do quite a bit of training with over the years, Joe Bubman. So welcome, Joe. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Joe is the founder and executive director of Urban Rural Action. He is he just have a wealth of background experience in both profit and nonprofit work, working with a lot of different organizations in influence and negotiation over the years. And Joe, we're excited to have you and kind of hear a little bit more about both your story and the work you're doing through.
Thanks. When I heard from Nolan that this was show 29, I was wondering what you were doing the previous 28 episodes, but better late than never.
Well, we are excited to have you, Joe. And first, kind of to kick things off, let's just talk about how you got into the field of negotiation.
Sure. When I graduated from college back in 2003, ancient history, I participated in a symposium in The Hague on international negotiation and conflict resolution. So it was a 4-week symposium, and we learned about the genocide in Rwanda, and we learned about various other international conflicts and efforts to resolve them. And that had a really profound impact on me. And I returned to the States and then worked for that organization for some time. The next sort of milestone for me in this journey was going to graduate school, focusing on conflict resolution at the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins, and taking a course on dispute settlement methods. And in that course, we read 2 books that really impacted me. One was Difficult Conversations, co-authored by Bruce Patton, who Aaron and I have come to know quite well over many years. And the second book, which was my favorite of all the books I've read in this field, was called Beyond Machiavelli, which was a book written by Roger Fisher. And the main ideas of the book, as I recall them, were the importance of putting yourself in the shoes of someone you're trying to influence and trying to understand the choice that they are being asked to make. And this book did an incredible job of applying that simple but not simplistic idea to conflicts like the Iranian hostage crisis and the first Gulf War. And it's just a very interesting book. And after I finished my graduate school program, I found work at Vantage Partners, which is how Aaron and I first met. And as Aaron said, this is for-profit consulting work, but it's really about helping companies negotiate more effectively with suppliers, with customers, with key alliance partners. But I was restless to do more international negotiation, conflict resolution work. And so I was able to finagle a secondment to Mercy Corps in 2011 and spent 3 months in Kenya working on post-election violence or post-election conflict resolution work, and 3 months in Guatemala working on land dispute resolution. So maybe I'll pause there, but that was how I kind of first got into the broad field.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Joe. It's just a great path. So you mentioned 2 books. What concepts, and getting in the other party's shoes, and I love that in terms of a simple but not simplistic sort of framework. Are there other key points there in your journey that you found kind of stick with you, particularly in the work you're doing now, but anything else that's kind of led into your growth and development of your mindset?
I think the biggest insight that sticks with me and that is really important in the work that I'm doing today is intellectual humility. And I'm not sure if that idea was explicitly talked about in those 2 books, but I think it is a part of all of the ideas. And just before coming into this conversation, we talked about mindset, action, results. And so this is a mindset piece. And it, Bruce would always talk about this. He would stand up on a chair in the workshop room, and he would talk about the possibility, the 1% possibility, that if we can just maintain a 1% chance that we might be wrong or might be missing something. And for me, and if we think about the exercises and the workshops that we run, the F exercise, which is for those listening who might not be familiar with this is an exercise where people are asked to read some text on a screen, and they're asked to count the number of times they see the letter F, as in Frank. But before they do that, I ask them to raise their hand and not to put it down until they're 100% sure that they've counted the correct number of Fs. And what we see invariably is that the vast majority of people undercount Fs because they're reading and they're reading the text as opposed to counting the number of times they see the letter F. And so they might miss the F in of, they might miss an F when they're two together in an italicized word. And to me, it just is a great illustration of how we are overconfident that we see everything there is to see. And when I think about the conversations that we're facilitating now over climate, over economic hardship, over democracy, over political violence, if we are able to bring some humility into those conversations, if we're able to bring some curiosity because we recognize that we might not know everything there is to know, then we're more likely to take the actions that are really effective, asking good questions, trying to listen and check our understanding of views that we might disagree with. But we're not going to do those things effectively if we assume that we have the answer and whoever has a different answer is just wrong, and they would be better off just agreeing with our point of view.
Yeah, it's so difficult, right? To really take a posture of curiosity. I think that's a challenge for all of us. You started to kind of allude to some of the things that you are discussing through UR Action. So can you tell us a little bit about urban rural action, what it is, why you started it?
Sure, I'll start with what it is, and then I'll go to why I started it. So Urban Rural Action is a national nonprofit, and our vision is a more peaceful, just, and democratic United States. And our mission is to bring Americans together across geographic, political, racial, and generational divides to build relationships, strengthen collaboration skills, explore different perspectives on issues, and work together to address challenges that impact all communities. Those challenges can be economic challenges, environmental challenges, political challenges, social challenges. We believe that if you can build relationships across divides, you can work together more effectively. We also believe that if you can work together to address challenges, you can build relationships and trust across divides. We see those two things as mutually reinforcing. In terms of why I started it, there are a few things that I think back to. One is that in my work at Mercy Corps 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I was in Guatemala, there was a program to help resolve land disputes. Land disputes in Guatemala are quite common because the owners of land, the property rights, the titles to those land, it's just not always clear. There aren't good records. There are competing historical records. There are also disputes between large landowners and the people living on those pieces of land. And I had a really interesting experience where we went and met with a family or a community that had participated in a mediation process. And the dispute had been, one dispute had been resolved with a neighboring community. But now they were in a dispute with a different neighbor over a different piece of the land border. And the sort of question that came to my mind was, well, why, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to talk to this other party and try to resolve it? And the answer was no. We're waiting for an engineer to come and do the GPS measurements and figure out exactly where the border ought to be. And what struck me was that this program focused on resolving land disputes did not include an element of building the skill to resolve disputes on your own, building the skill to talk about, well, do we want the land? Do we plan to use it to grow cardamom or grow coffee or grow corn? Or do we plan to use it to build a soccer field or a church or a hospital? How can we engage in conversation with this other party as opposed to waiting indefinitely for some third party to show up and hopefully save the day? And that always struck me as a major shortcoming. And so when I thought about work we might do with parties in disputes or with people in a context of conflict, I always felt like equipping people with some skills they can use on their own is really important. And maybe just a second thing I'll share, Aaron and Nolan, because I think that was a bit kind of narrow, but bigger picture. The work that I have done over the years for Mercy Corps, which is an international NGO, non-governmental organization that merged with the Conflict Management Group back in 2004, has been to prevent organized violence in East Africa, West Africa, Southeast Asia, Central America, the types of places, Aaron, where I know you've served in your career. And what struck me over the past several years is that the conflict dynamics that exist in those countries exist in the United States as well. And what I mean by conflict dynamics is political polarization, divisive rhetoric from elected officials, widening economic inequality, misinformation and disinformation, loneliness and isolation, easy access to firearms, right? All of these dynamics that can contribute to violent conflict exist in the United States. And so I was motivated to apply some of the approaches that I've seen work overseas, bringing people together across divides to carry out projects together, bring people together to engage in constructive dialogue, apply those in the United States to see if we can't overcome some of the challenges that we face and advance a more peaceful society.
Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NegotiateX TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team, are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.